What are you going to do today to make yourself better? And like write that down in your notes, in your phone, text someone if you can and say, hey, I'm going to do X. Make me accountable. Tell someone you're going to do it. It could be I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to do press ups. I'm going to do stop smoking, stop drinking. I'm going to sleep tonight at midnight, not at 2 a.m. after scrolling on TikTok for hours. What are you going to do today to be better? And then only worry about doing that once. And then only worry about doing that one more time. And then one more time.
Harry, welcome to the show. You've been a guest that I've been eyeing for a long, long time. And that's because I really respect your work ethic, your hustle, your ability to not only do the work, but also reflect. And I'm really excited to dive into this conversation and dive into you and your story here today.
I mean, I super appreciate that. It's great to be here. I've obviously seen from the sidelines how well you've done. So really appreciate you having me on the show today.
Hell yeah. So let's start with getting a call at 18 that you were too young. What was that call about, and why did that call play such a significant role in your life?
I mean, there's a couple of reasons. One, I got a call that I was too young to be a VC and that actually I just needed more experience. And I think that it really shaped me in two ways. Number one is it actually shaped me in the way that I listened to a Steve Martin quote very intensely, which is you have to be so good that they cannot ignore you. And I realized then that actually if I couldn't persuade them, I would have to show them. And I was intent more than anything in proving that I could build 20 VC into such a force that they could not agree that it was a worthy competitor, it was a worthy endeavor, and that actually I was good enough. And then I think second, it's like bluntly, no one can tell you that you're not good enough. Only you can tell yourself that. And even then, you drastically underestimate yourself. I think one of the most dangerous things in startups is visions. We're all expected to have a vision. The truth is, visions unfold over time. They change with circumstance, with macro environments, and they can mislead you in many ways, and they can place artificial ceilings on you in many ways. When I started the show, I wanted to be an associate at a venture fund in London. When I was 21, 22, I was managing a $150 million fund with my co-founder at the time. So honestly, my vision was an artificial ceiling on top of what I could do. And actually, I think they can constrain you in ways. And so I think people need to be a lot more flexible around what they can achieve in the timeframes they think they can, because you can do more than you think.
Yeah. It's remarkable how often, even just like someone saying, I want to be the first person to graduate from college from my family, they like view that as the top. They view graduating and it's interesting because we constantly break the limits that we have over and over and over again. But when we look at them in the present day form, we say, like, that's too high. That's too crazy. I know right now for me, it's like, I'm trying to run a 3-hour, 30-minute marathon. I've never run a marathon before. And I have that in my head as like, that's crazy. But I know that if I just put in work for a long enough time, that can get done. So for you, what is the thing in your mind where if you accomplish this thing, that would be insane to you in this present moment?
I don't think like that because I've learned that actually it will only lead me to disappointment. The truth is, when you speak to athletes, the hardest time is just when they hit that race, when they do the 3-minute 30. I don't think, I'm going to be so happy when I used to. I'm going to be so happy when the fund is raised, when I hit 1 million plays per show. And it actually just led to this overwhelming sadness that I didn't have something to then shoot for. It's the age-old enjoy the process and not the outcome. But just love what you do on a daily basis and don't think too, like, have it in your mind. But honestly, I don't think like I will be happy when. I've said this before, but you know, when I was 21 or 22, I always dreamed of being a millionaire. We watched Who Wants to Be a Millionaire when we were younger, which was a big show in the UK. And I made 1 million when I was, whatever I was, 21 or 22. And that should be, I thought, would be one of the happiest moments. It wasn't. It was filled with deep sadness in the way that I thought, wow, I could do all of these things, and I didn't have any friends. I didn't really have any meaningful relationships outside of my family that I could lean on and share things with. And it was this realization of actually what matters in life. And so I try to avoid the milestone thinking. That's joy. It's not happiness. Joy is transient. It's I will be ecstatic when. It's not where true happiness lies. True happiness lies in knowing what makes you continuously happy. What makes me continuously happy is walking around the park with my mother and getting an espresso and teaching her about, you know, interest rate environments and venture capital and fund construction models. And I think too many people think I'll be happy when, and it just leads to more unhappiness, actually.
Okay, so why do the show? Why have a fun? Why even do anything if you don't believe you'll be happy when you accomplish something?
Because I love the process. I love people. And I think the way that I've constructed my life allows me to engage with the best people and learn in a really, really tangible, repeatable way. You know, we do 3 shows per week, now 4 with Business of Sport. And so I get to learn from the best. Also, podcasts are brilliant because they give people a reason to speak to you. When I was younger, especially when I was 18, 19, 20, why would the CEOs of these companies speak to me? Well, now you have a podcast, you have a reason to speak to them. That's really important. And so you need to give people a reason to speak to you. A podcast is very helpful for that. And then the fun. So I learn intensely through the podcast. And then the fun allows me to work and learn intensely from some of the best and most ambitious founders in a continuous and ongoing relationship, which is really meaningful. Helping founders build a company in some way is actually a very, very committed relationship for many years. And so it creates real bonds. And so why do I do it? I love people. They inspire me. I think everyone is special in their own way. And I've learned actually, I thought about this for many years. I thought some people were just bad interview guests. They weren't good. They weren't good at their stories. And then what I learned is actually there's no such thing as a bad interview. There's only such thing as bad questions. And that's on me for not doing my work. It informs a lot of how we do our prep process now. But it really shaped a lot of my thinking around how I interview and how I question people. But that's why I do what I do. This intense love of people and their stories.
Yeah, there's also a responsibility piece of it. You were putting the responsibility for the interview to be good on the other person rather than on yourself. Where do you think currently in your life you are lacking responsibility for something?
What do you mean by that?
Where are you placing the blame externally rather than internally?
It's a very good question. One that I might steal. For a long time I did with drinking. I know it's a bit of a cop-out saying, but like for a long time I did with drinking. I said that, I needed it for work. It was a social lubricant. You go to lots of drinks parties, you go to lots of dinners. It's weird. It's socially awkward not to, especially in Europe or the UK where it's just a lot more prevalent than US culture. And so I would put the blame, so to speak, on society. I think, that was a very, very long-standing one where I kind of would absolve responsibility to society and society's expectations of me. I think otherwise, I'm like a radical owner of my own mistakes. I don't really have any, honestly, right now. I made mistakes in the last few years. I could have sold positions and returned cash. And you know what? It was a lesson on liquidity and liquidity management. Is that anyone's fault but my own? No. I think the most important thing is owning. I did this or I didn't do this, and that's on me. And I think the minute that you have, kind of poopy pants at someone else's fault, that's not good enough. That's not okay. And so I don't do that.
Yeah. It's so interesting because these are blind spots where we're blaming other people often because no one stops and points out to you unless it's so much of a problem that it's impacting their life. Hey, Harry, you're drinking too much. Like no one actually wants to have that conversation with you because in the moment you're going to be like, what do you mean? Of course I'm not. This is what I need to do. You don't understand me. And so often these are like hidden in our day-to-day lives. And I guess the question becomes like, how do we get better at uncovering those hidden limiting ways in which we're thinking?
I think one is I work insanely hard, and I don't often delegate enough. And I think where I would absolve responsibilities, I'd say, well, no one can do what I do, and I still say that. So I don't think that's true, but it's a way to absolve responsibility and keep on doing something that I probably shouldn't be. There's some things I guess that I probably shouldn't be doing anymore that I still do, but no one can do what I do. And so that would be one where I would say, actually, I do keep responsibility in a negative way.
Yeah. And especially if I think a good way to uncover these also is like where you get upset, where the triggers are in your life. Like if someone, an assistant of yours or someone below you was like, Harry, like I could do this. And you bet, no, you can't. Like this is mine to do. And if you got upset and was able to witness that upsetness in yourself, that could show a place where you're not potentially free.
I'll get upset if you let me down. If you take ownership of something and say, I've got it, and then it's not done well, and you didn't ask for help, that will piss me off because I relied on you. I set my timings and processes around you executing it as you said you could. You then didn't come to me for help. Then I'm going to be pissed off. If you say, hey, I don't know how to do it, not a problem. If you say, I want to do it, and then you need help, not a problem. But it's when there's surprise that leads to further disruption that I'll get pissed off.
And what's the root of that anger?
Letting people down and knock-on effects. When there's knock-on effects, then it's very frustrating. I'm just making this up, but someone didn't edit an episode, which means the videographer can't go in and do their clips, which means the marketing team can't go in and do their social media automation, which means 3 teams are delayed because one editor didn't do their job. Now I'm frustrated. And there was no advance warning, there was no communication. That would frustrate me for sure.
And is that something that you are seeking to get better at? Like,
No.
would you? No.
No, you should be worried if you don't communicate. But it's just about setting expectations with the people that you work with, which is, hey, this is absolutely a safe space to say, I don't know how to do something, or I'm stuck. I've been in a situation before where I have no freaking clue what is going on. People are using acronyms, and I don't know what they mean. Nothing is too little or too big to ask. You don't know what VC is? Fine, ask. No one's going to judge you. It's okay. But do not let other people rely on you, pretend it's okay, and then disrupt everyone else's work. And so it's about setting the safety, but parameters. And that's really hard. The other hard thing I find with news in an organization is good news will flow very fast. The minute you hit a new record, Danny, you're going to hear about it today. Bad news, that's not going to flow so fast. That'll take a little bit more time. And so I really need to create an environment where bad news comes at me just as fast as good news. And I think about that a lot, for sure.
How do you do that?
Honestly, it's through admitting my own failures. I really made a mistake here. Or, we really should have done that better. And that's totally on me. And so setting the standards for it's okay to not necessarily do it all right or make mistakes. And I think you have to lead from the front in that way. And then I think also just by being super direct and saying, hey, we're all here to get better and it's okay not to know. So honestly, nothing's too big or small. Just let me know and we can work through anything together.
It's interesting because the way you speak today, and I've heard you on previous podcasts, is with the importance of emotional intelligence, understanding people, and psychology being the forefront of your interests and how you're speaking in today's day and age. Were you always that way, or is that something you've built over time?
I think I've always had it to an extent. but I really study psychology a lot. Like, I think the most important thing is the workings of humans. What makes someone feel safe? What makes someone feel supported? What makes someone feel angry? There's things like find a common enemy. One thing I will always have in any of my companies, we will find an enemy. Because every day we need to wake up and we need to look and go, we are beating them or we are not beating them and we need to beat them. So what inspires? Different people have different things that will inspire, motivate, fear them. And so I think intensely about that today. I don't think I always did. And I think that comes with time. And I think that goes to something interesting, which is serial founders or second time founders are inherently advantaged in a way that I think we underappreciate. There are so many things you do differently as a second-time founder, having seen what can go wrong as a first-time founder. I look back to some of my first companies and everyone was my buddy. I'm young. It's so easy when you're young and a CEO or a founder. You want everyone to be fun and we're friends. No, we're not. We're not necessarily friends first. We work together and we work for a common mission and goal. And we can be friends, but we work together. We're not buddy-buddy. There comes a time when the OKRs come out and we are driving towards a common goal. And you need to set the tone. And that can be hard to do unless you do it from day one. And so I think there's a lot of things which second-time founders have and know that we don't value actually enough.
You've said before that the most sinful thing about adulthood is the loss of childhood joy.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how you think about that when, you're in the business now of we have to hit these OKRs. We're not buddy-buddy, but a childhood and someone who is living with childhood joy would be like, oh, it's all good. Life's good. You're my friend. You're my pal. But that might not lead to the best advancements in business. So how do you think about that dichotomy?
I think about it in the way there are little things in life that bring joy that you lose appreciation for over time. Ice cream, a cinnamon bun, walking in the park in the sun, lying on the grass. Abstract yourself away from the office and think about what makes you you and what makes you happy. Not many people actually know what they want, and not many people actually knows what makes them happy. I think it's very easy in growing up and adulthood to actually lose appreciation for the little things. For me, it's, that cookie that goes in the microwave and crumbles and you have the big chocolatey bits, or the great sashimi. That will make me happy. And I think, one thing that's very interesting is how happiness turns into expectation. A great example is you're told about Wi-Fi on a flight and they say, hey, we didn't know we were going to have it, but we've got Wi-Fi on this Virgin Atlantic flight. Woohoo, delight, fantastic. When you go in with the expectation of Wi-Fi on the flight and then it's not there, you go, this is sinful. I'm going to complain to Virgin Atlantic. Both outcomes, are quite ironic in the way that it's so important to not expect and to still be delighted by the little things in life. And I just try to make sure that we don't lose that. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
You also have to manufacture. Sorry, I'm just kind of chatting around this, but
Please.
Not enough founders manufacture wins, and I think that's really important in teams. There will be little things that happen. You hit 1,000 subscribers, you hit 100,000 plays, you hit £10,000, whatever that is. It may not be that meaningful, but the morale of your company is a constant drumbeat, and you have to keep hitting it. And actually, manufacture small wins to ensure people feel progression. Otherwise, you can face this kind of meandering morale. And so I think especially in the early days, you really have to manufacture that hype to make people feel progress.
On the topic of manufacturing wins, there was an Olympic weightlifting coach who was known as the best weightlifting coach. I can't remember his name, and I don't remember where I got this nugget from, but he basically tracked the most amount of data of any coach. And the reason for that is because the more data that you track, the more likely you can to PR in your next practice. And the people who PR the most in practices are going to be happy the most amount of time, or the most joyful, or the most excited by the progress, hence wanting to continue, hence wanting to train harder. But the separator was the tracking of multiple variables. And it's like, the more variables you track subscribers, you could track listeners, you could track, and to build that into a company when you're just starting, or a new habit when you're just starting. I know for me, it was like with running, I have the Garmin watch now, I'm tracking heart rate. I never tracked heart rate before, but this is like a new thing that I can get better at. And so, thinking about how you...
I struggle with this, to be honest. I find the best interviews are ones where it's a natural conversation. And I struggle with exactly what you just said there, which is like, I'm a completely obsessive mind. It's my greatest strength is my greatest weakness, like many others. I'm a fucking obsessive. And when I get into running, I get into running. But you know what happens? I get so into it that every time I run, I have to PR. Every time I run, it has to be better. It has to be more. We have to bleed on the streets and win. And it actually then, you know what happens? I get shin splints. I fuck up my ankles. And then I can't run for 6 months. And so I've tried something recently. I saw a running coach, and he said, you know what? I don't want Strava. Can you stop this competition with your friends? Can you put on a podcast? I asked if I could put on my own. He said no. And said, just enjoy the art of running. Take in the street, take in the podcast, and don't track yourself. And actually, I've done that now. And I really love the craft of running more. And I guess I'm doing better, and that's cool. But I'm not tracking it, and I'm just enjoying running again. And it goes back on what we said about OKRs. It goes back to the ultimate thing of life here, which is that for every piece of advice, there are two sides. Work-life balance. There are people who bleed from their eyes and midnight every night, and there are people who don't. There are people who are super thin and eat terrible, and there are people who are larger and actually eat quite healthy. Like, everyone is to their own. It's one of the biggest lessons from investing, interviewing 3,000 VCs. There is no right way to invest. You have to find your right way. You have to find what makes you happy and your joy. But there's not a right way. Some people love the tracking like you're running. It feels progress, feels improvement. And actually, for me, it just fed obsession. And so it's a great example, but I've actually gone the other way now. It's interesting.
I love that. And the thing is, it's like, I think the reason why old people are wise is because they've lived different seasons of their life with different strategies, and hence see more perspectives and can hold them in their head at the same time. Like, they had one season where they were tracking everything and every day, and they had another season where they stopped tracking, and they understand that both people are correct. And I think when I was younger, one thing that I always thought about was like, I have the right way. And then as I got older, I experienced more ways and saw, well, that was the right way for me at this time. That was the right way for me at that time. When you think about your current season of life, like, it sounds like you're very much in slow down, enjoy the process. Let's really get comfortable with life and enjoy it and be at peace. If that's correct, what do you think was the starting point for you on that journey?
Well, I mean, I would love to think that, but I think it's the total opposite. I think my girlfriend would be thrilled if she actually thought I was in that position. No, I'm still in the bleed till your eyes just hurt. I believe that people don't generally... This is a generation where it is easy to be exceptional, because if you work your ass off, you will generally beat 99%. And it's a really hard thing, because it's a bit like, I've had eating disorders before. It's a bit like eating disorders. Society encourages you to keep going, bleeding to death, at the desk, and, getting thinner and thinner. And they say, you look great. And you say, oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm only bulimic. You don't obviously say that. But you say, oh, thank you so much. And it encourages you. Work-wise, absolutely, you see yourself doing better and better. You see more and more hits, more and more views, more and more money, better investments, better whatever. And life encourages you. Where am I in that stage of life? I'm building, man. You know what? Going to your point of like phases of life, there are phases of life where you can focus more on different things. This is the phase of life where I'm building. And you also have to remember that momentum's transient. We have momentum now. We have incredible growth. I need to make sure that we capitalize on that in the most efficient and opinionated and strong way that we can get to the level where I think we should be. And so, no, I would say I'm definitely in build mode. And the only question that I have is, can you ever get off it? It's the treadmill of life, which is like, you don't one day go, oh, great, I'm now there in, this mode that I wanted to be. I'm going to take my foot off. No, you always will want more and more and more. And so I think that's something that I think about. But right now, it's about row your own race. Don't worry about the competition. Know the next 6 to 9 months. Don't worry about more. And bluntly execute against your own goals. And that's it for me right now.
Yeah, I do think that there's something to testosterone and it changing over the course of your life. Meaning, like, you might not want to be in build mode and attack everything when you're 60 years old because your hormones might be different. So that's something to keep in mind and to think about. And I think it's okay that you're in the season and it might change as you have children someday. Um,
I think children change a huge amount. I've
yeah.
spent a lot of time in the last month asking billionaires, hedge fund managers, founders, VCs, uh, every type of people kind of who I deemed successful in their discipline. And I asked them one question. I say, what do you know now that you wish you'd known the night before you had your first child? The answers have been varying but fascinating. And I've really taken a lot from that, actually. I think children change a huge amount and are an incredible joy. But I always ask that question now.
One of the things that this podcast also often goes to, like yours does, is parenting. And I'm curious why parenting fascinates you so much.
I think it is the ultimate. It's a fascinating thing, which is like you no longer matter anymore. You are no longer the primary thing in your life, and no longer matter anymore is wrong. It's more you are no longer the primary thing in your life. When you're married, I'm not married, so like to be clear, this is classic, privileged young man speaking about marriage, like they know what they're talking about. But like when you're married, you can still go to the gym, you can still go out with your friends, you can still do all the things that you want to do in many ways, and in many ways put yourself first. When you're a parent, you can't. For the first time in your life, you are no longer primary, and I think that causes this incredible growing up very quickly, an intense sense of responsibility towards this individual, but also towards the world because of the world that you want them to grow up in. And so I think that's a very, very important change in someone that's very quickly ushered upon. And so I like to focus on that. Great interviews often focus around developments in someone in a short space of time. Talk to me about that moment where you IPO'd and got $100 million. How did your mindset change? Talk to me about that moment when X failed. How did it change? Short moments of time that cause large changes. I focus on a lot, and I think parenting is the ultimate example of that.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that my mom pointed out to me that specifically in the realm that we deal with in entrepreneurship in a lot of senses is a selfish pursuit. You could obviously be selfless in helping people accomplish some end, but you're doing it because in many cases you want to do it. And parenting is the opposite of like, you want to do it. And then like, you're realizing that you're not the main character and this other person that you're caring for is. And there's something beautiful about that dichotomy of entrepreneurs who are parents.
I think one thing that I've also learned from great CEOs, and I'm regurgitating their words, not obviously illustrating mine with my lack of children, but there's so much of CEOship that's transferable to parenting, and so much of parenting that's transferable to CEOship. There's a brilliant book, How to Talk So Children Will Listen and Listen So Children Will Talk. How do you create environments of true safety for your team members, but for your children as well? How do you let both know that there's no question that they can't ask, and there's nothing that they can't come to you with? How do you also create an environment of ambition and humility at the same time? These are all completely transferable across parenting and across company building. I asked a billionaire founder last night, what do you know now that you wish you'd known when you had your first child? And he said, I wish I'd watched the Discovery Channel. I said, I'm sorry. And he said, watch the elephants. They show you the way. Their children or their, mini elephants, whatever we want to call them, follow. The parents show the way and they follow. I wish I'd seen that earlier. It's not what you say, it's what you do. You can say, oh, we should be humble kids, we should be humble kids. And if you're not that, it's not going to transfer. Focus on what you do.
It's great advice. You've mentioned before that your biggest fear is being Macaulay Culkin. If that's still the case, why?
I mean, Macaulay Culkin, was obviously well known when he was young. And then, I hope he never ever listens to me say this, but obviously his career took a challenging kind of nosedive. And I think he kind of peaked early. I think like any young person who's done well in that field, I very much think about sustainability, about longevity, about this being a very, very long game. I think far too many people are caught up in the short term. And actually, it's really important to remember that you've never won or lost. You're only ever ahead or behind. I've never won. Like people go, oh, you've won the game of podcasting or media venture. No, I freaking haven't. Every day I need to fight to be better. We need to fight to be better. I haven't won anything. I haven't lost anything either. We can always make it back. But it's really important to have this kind of infinite mind. And so I care intensely about sustaining a very, very high level of performance and ensuring that I don't Macaulay Culkin it and, have a very, very good first innings and not sustain that. I think it goes back to, the point of finding what you do and loving the process. I've never loved what I do more. Really important. If I didn't love this, I wouldn't do it. I love what I do more than ever now. And for me personally, people talk about burnout. And I honestly find it a bit of a luxurious position for me to even talk about burnout. My grandfather works on a golf course, shoveling gravel for about £12, whatever that is, $15 an hour. He's 85. That's hard work. I sit here in a nice house with a nice iMac and an EA that brings me coffee and Diet Coke. I can work for 15, 16 hours a day in this environment and not feel burnout. And I think actually like just appreciating a little bit what we have and what sometimes our family and ancestors have done is really important. I think about that a lot. My grandpa inspires me.
What else have you learned from your grandpa?
Amazing question, and probably the greatest question of all. He taught me the most important piece of advice. He was a hotel manager back in his day. And I remember once he sat down with me when he was working in hotels. And he said, you see all these people? They feel comfortable. And I said, yeah, they do, I guess. And he said, yeah, it's the most important thing. It's not what you say. It's not what you do. It's how you make people feel. And my job is to make everyone in here feel like this is their home. That's my job. And, I intensely feel now that I can say whatever, I can do whatever. But what matters is I make my team feel inspired. I make my team feel ambitious, encouraged. Safety is a dual word. You don't want safety in all cases. Safety is not infinite. You cannot have unlimited safety. If someone is not good enough, they will not forever be safe. But you want them to feel safe in certain circumstances. But I learned that from my grandfather, which for me was very, very important in terms of how I conduct both myself as an investor and as an interviewer. I care intimately about how people feel when they're on my show. And also, he's a brilliant, brilliant man who also taught me be the highlight of everyone's day. And what he meant by that is actually, when you look at a meeting, go into it and go, you know what? This is going to be the meeting that they say to their husband, wife, child at the end of the day, oh, I had a really fun one. I will G myself up before every founder meeting and say, Harry, come on, let's get this going. Let's bring the energy. Let's bring the charisma. And let's make this a good meeting for them as well as for me. Be the highlight of someone else's day. He also taught me, sorry, I'm going on, but he taught me a lot. He always spoke to everyone. And I mean, that seems obvious in terms of you should speak to everyone, like the bellboy, the barista, the doorman. but he would know their names. He would know their children's names. He would know where they went on holiday. And he taught me that some of the joys in life come from the most frequent interactions you have. And what he meant by that was there are so many people you see on a daily basis, the barista, the doorman, the security guard, and you normally will have your headphones in and hi, hi. But if you say, hi, Danny, how's your mother doing? Actually, instantly, you will have so much more fulfillment and enrichment in your life through an additional 10, 15 seconds. And that really makes a difference to human happiness.
Yeah. Why is that? Because I often find the same thing, that I'll make small talk or connect with a stranger and it will feel so good after, like 10 minutes after. And I'll really track that in myself. And I'm guessing you notice the same thing. What's going on there from your perspective?
I think we all yearn human connection. We all yearn to be seen, and we all yearn a touch point with another that's more than just hi. That when someone says, "Oh, how's your mother doing?" I go, "Oh, she's great. Thank you so much for remembering. How's your daughter?" "Oh, she's skiing now, but she's back soon." I think everyone yearns for human connection, which is why I'm actually anti-remote work, and I'll get killed for that. But I don't really care what people think when I say some things, so don't care. But like, I think that's why actually a lot of remote work breeds, unhappiness in a lot of employees that I see. And so I think that's why it's this yearning to be seen, recognized, and connect with someone physically in a physical environment.
It's funny. You said you don't care about what people think about you saying remote work is bad, but like you did caveat it of saying like, I know people will get upset at me when I say this. So it does insinuate that you do slightly care about what people, or at least thinking about what they're going to say when you say that.
It shows an
And why is that?
awareness. It shows an awareness, not a care. Like, and I care what people think on some things. I'm by no means. I would love to say I don't care what people think. That is when you know, that's good. That would be ultimate achievement unlocked. I care.
Would it? Would it
I
really?
I think so, especially in the world of content. Yeah, no, like I will deeply take on board what people say, an anonymous account on Twitter when they're horrible to me, and it will hurt me. I'm human, and it really hurts on certain things.
If you
Um,
believe it yourself.
no, just like if I put a lot of work into it and someone says something shit or someone really disagrees with something that for some reason, feel passionate, you can't often describe why something's resonating more than others. But on something where I'm like, you know what? You can disagree with me. I don't care. Remote work, sure. I don't care. This is how I feel. I'm happy to change my mind if you have a good opinion. If you don't and you just want to shout criticism, I don't care. Fine. And so I think it depends on the topic. But yeah, I think you don't want to be too centered around how other people feel about you. You should probably know that yourself. And I think if I have that for some things and I don't have that for others.
What's the comment you said before, that a comment that really hurts you is if you put in a lot of work into something and someone says it's bad?
Yeah.
What other comments really get to you or stick out in your mind?
I think it sounds awful when people don't see, you know, the truth. And what I mean by that is like sometimes people will say, like, oh, VC podcaster. And it's like, dude, it's like a very real media company that makes millions of dollars a year. And, I am absolutely an entrepreneur and a founder. It's, the first of three businesses that I've done, all of which have made significant money and been profitable businesses. I think it will frustrate me and upset me when people don't see the whole picture. And maybe that's like an insecurity in myself, maybe. But it's just like, if you're going to insult me, do the work. Like, understand the picture. And I find that frustrating. But I genuinely less and less care. A friend told me there will always be someone in a dark room who will go back through your Twitter to 2012 and find when you said that sandwich in Brooklyn was great, you were wrong. That sandwich shop shut down and you lied. You're a liar. And you know what? I care about what the people who I respect think about me. And, the anonymous accounts on Twitter, I really just silence out now.
When you think about the growth of the show and the growth of you personally, where have you made the biggest improvement in terms of yourself from the show?
Easy. Consistency. That's a really good question, by the way. I normally cut out it's a really good question. Don't know if you do. We can talk about content, edits, and everything in between. But I normally cut out it's a really good question because, like, oh, fucking interesting. Not. And so, one thing that people underestimate with content is the value and the importance of consistency to create a habit in the mind of the listener and of the audience. You know, it doesn't actually always matter what is that cadence. It does. Actually, for podcasting, it does for a lot of things, but the consistency is what matters. And I really learned the power of consistency through podcasting that I have applied to my personal life, particularly like fitness, you know, doing the work when I don't feel like it. I sometimes don't feel like releasing 3 podcasts a week, if I'm totally honest. I sometimes don't feel like going for the run at 7 a.m., but it's not the point. The point is consistency. And I really learned that actually consistency is 90% of the work. Another thing is that actually a lot of the time you will have to be willing to not see gains now for gains in the future. Things compound over time. The biggest mistake people make with content is they give up too soon. It took 250 episodes before we hit 1,000 plays per show. 250 episodes. That is 2 years of mind-numbing work, which I loved, by the way, but like with zero recognition at all. No one liked it other than my mother. And now she doesn't even listen. No, I'm kidding. She does listen. But you know, that realization that actually I've got to go to the gym for 6 months before I'm going to have biceps that I can really start to be proud of. And I mean, clearly it's not working, but you know, it takes time for those things to happen, and you have to be a little bit patient. I think the other thing is like asking great questions. Like the importance of asking great questions is so transferable between investing and interviewing. I think interviewers, journalists, podcasters actually make some of the best investors because they understand the root of getting to the heart of a person, a business, in a way that you can only learn through interviewing several, 100 times at least. I really think interviewing is one of the most underrated arts.
I couldn't agree more. What are some questions or ways of interviewing that most people get wrong?
They don't open up themselves. It's a very challenging thing to show one's true self, show vulnerability, to say I had bulimia and it was a struggle. And what a lot of interviewers do is they say, "What's your most challenging moment?" And you go, I don't know. I work too hard. Most brilliant answer to any hiring question, isn't it? I'm too ambitious. I love those. I still get them. They're fantastic. And so what you have to do is you have to give a little piece of yourself first. I'll say, you know, when I reflect on my journey, a really hard element that I had to overcome was bulimia. How do you think, Danny, about what your biggest challenge has been and what helped you get over it? That's really interesting. That's really important to put yourself in the discussion to make them feel like they're not the only ones giving. It's an exchange. I think that's really important. I think another thing that I've really taken is the importance of structure. Structured minds win. And I sound totally unstructured here, but I'm just fucking ad-libbing and it's the end of the day and I'm fasting, so why not? But it's like very, very good interview guests are able to structure their thoughts clearly. Danny, that's a great question. When I think about it, there's 3 things that I take away. I apply that to a lot of how I live in terms of structuring. Could be investing, could be weighing the benefits of an exercise routine, diet. A structured mind is very, very helpful. Speaking of structured minds, I've totally gone off on a tangent, so there you go.
Well, my show is pretty unstructured, and when doing research for this, I found out that part of your show and part of the way you structure your show is by cutting out 30% of the episodes that you record, you never publish. And then of the episodes that you do publish, you take out like 30% as well from the guests on average.
I mean, I would
You
take out 70% of the things that I say if I was you, but yeah, no, I absolutely do. So essentially, yeah, we don't release 1 in 3 shows. Um, we have an incredible speaking coach, a former TED coach, full time on staff. They essentially analyze the interviews. And for those that aren't released, they'll provide full transcripts with notes, coaching, proactive advice, and recommendations. And so when we say to someone, hey, I'm really sorry, sadly it didn't fit the content guidelines, but here's a PDF with a breakdown of how it can be improved, proactive recommendations, and suggestions, they go, wow, I'm so glad that I was rejected because this is so helpful. I speak once a week and I always have done this the same way. This has totally changed how I think and operate. Thank you. And so I always try and kind of give back in those cases because otherwise it's difficult to say, you haven't made it. And then in those where we take out 30-40%. I would say we take out 40 to 50% now. Why do we do that? Two things. One, word to value ratio is very, very important. I don't like fluff. And so I think that every sentence has to deliver value. And I go through that. We have editors, but I spend Saturday and Sunday editing like a newspaper editor would to determine word to value ratio. People repeat things, people extend a story too long, they use words that aren't necessary and actually aren't needed. Whole questions can be shit. I'll take them out entirely. So word to value ratio is super important. And then time to value ratio. It's very much like any other product. You have to hit a nugget of wisdom in the first 3 minutes of an interview. If you don't, your likelihood of churn is massively increased. It's what frustrates me so much when you listen to shows and it's like 9 minutes in, and then I went to Stanford and I studied CS, and you're like, fuck. 9 minutes in, this person's still going on like Stanford and their college. We need to get to some nuggets of wisdom. And I said it's like your product. Bad product isn't released. Product managers and product designers don't release bad product. It's the same for us. If we don't feel like a podcast is good enough, we don't release it. And so I kind of apply the product mindset to podcasting very intensely.
How many of those episodes that you've cut do you think could have potentially been amazing? In the sense of, like, you're the judge and jury and you have a team of editors who are saying, all right, this is the quality that we go for. And I appreciate that quality, but sometimes we are not the best judge and jury. And
Well,
that's
it's not even that, Danny. The hard thing is the audience is so multifaceted, whereby I may think it's way too basic, and when the person said it's all about the founder, and actually culture starts with the leader, and culture is really important, and a big market's really important, to someone who's coming fresh to venture capital, that's quite interesting, actually, that VCs look for 3 things: big market, great products, and great team. So it's difficult because value is perceived differently in the eyes of the consumer. I think then it's a case of knowing who your customer is and asking whether it aligns to the content brand that you want to build. And so that's kind of how I apply it. But you're right, it's a very big challenge because people value things very differently.
Yeah. When you look at the competition, it seems like you're very fierce with the competition and thinking about it. You mentioned before having a common enemy. And there have been, a couple of podcasters that have absolutely blown up from the UK over the past few years. Looking at Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, kind of similar-ish world. You see Chris Williamson with Modern Wisdom. Not the same value prop as 20VC. But to me, I'm thinking about it from your perspective of like, I've been doing this for 8 years and these guys seemingly blew up in a faster amount of time. Is there any resentment there? Do you look at that as like, all right, like this is just part of the process? Do you look at them as enemies? What is your perspective on newer podcasters blowing up to a new level?
Well, know the game you're playing. Stephen Bartlett is an amazing talent, an amazing person. So is Chris Williamson.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes.
I don't actually know his. I mean, I know him. I see his TikToks, but I haven't listened. They're going mass market. They are playing a mass market game. They want to do books, courses, tours. Fuck that. I don't want to do that. That's like comparing Taco Bell to a completely different restaurant which does, pasta. Like I respect them intensely for what they do and they're amazing at it. But we're going after very different things. The core business that I have is investing. I use media to be the best investor in the world. They do not do funds in the way that I do funds. Everything goes back to delivering the best returns to my investors. That is my job. Now, they are great, great media houses, but the funds associated and how they think about investing, I think, is very different. I don't know if Chris invests, but it's a totally different game to play. And so, no, I don't at all have any resentment. I think incredible respect to them for building them and an awareness that we're playing a different game. And so I don't worry about that at all. And I think that's great. I'm very impressed by the cohort of creators we have around us. I think there's quite a few that I really love. I think there's also ones that are like hypey. I'm not saying either of those are hypey, but there's like hypey and there's like really good quality. I think the guys that acquired are fantastic. They do incredible work. I think David Senra at Founders is incredible. I respect them. It's a really interesting point. It sounds dickish, but when didn't have very much and I was young, I would be resentful of people who were ahead of me or better than me or just good or competition. Now I'm just like, good for you. I'm going to row my own race and I've got my goals and I know what I need to do, but good for you. Like the guys that acquired are fantastic. David at Founders is incredible. The work they do is immense. I'm just going to cheer you on and mention you on other podcasts because I respect you. And so I think success is quite a nice thing in the way that you lose resentment. I found I lost resentment, lost jealousy, lost bitterness, but I actually retained the ambition. So it's a good question though, and I think about it a lot.
How have you managed to do that?
I think I found peace with what makes me happy. Like, I had a tax bill that was egregious, made my eyes bleed. And I went to someone and I said, I feel less of a person. I identified as the rich one in my family, the rich one in my friends. I feel like a hit to my identity. And they said, oh, when are you happiest? And I said, when I'm walking around the park with my mother on Sunday afternoon and we get an espresso from a great shop in London that does the best espressos in London. And he said, how much does that cost? And I said, £6, so about $8. And I said, that's when you're happiest in life. Could you still do that after the tax bill? I said, yeah. And they're like, okay. That doesn't seem to make much of a difference to your ultimate happiness then. And I'm like, actually, they're right. And actually just knowing that grounding of what really made me happy made a big difference. And I think, honestly, knowing who you are takes time. And again, it's why I like slightly older founders, just because you grow up. You lose the petulance, you lose the volatility of, it's great, it's not great. Why do I like serial founders? Because when things are really, really great, they're not going out buying Gucci or buying sports cars. And when things are really bad, they're also aware that their child could get sick tomorrow and that actually this missed quarter isn't the end of the world. You need to play the long game, and playing the long game is about an even keel and being your best self on the worst day. And you can only be your best self on the worst days if you're even. And so I think very carefully about retaining that stable mind to act regardless of situation. And I think that's why drinking is so dangerous, because it creates volatility of emotion, paranoia, nervousness, none of which will allow you to operate your best when you're most needed.
What other ways have you become more stable? or helped yourself become more stable other than stopping drinking?
Yeah, I like to build in routine wherever I can. I think routine is hugely underappreciated. So, what do I mean by that? I have dinners at 8 p.m. I know that that allows me to go to the gym beforehand from 6:30 to 8 p.m. That's a nice routine that I can get into. I know I'll get the exercise. I know that the dinner's there, and then I come back and work at 10:30, and I have a regimented structure to my day. It creates this concreteness of certainty, of knowing what is happening. Different people thrive on different things. Some is spontaneity, some is, and there's nothing wrong with that. I thrive on knowing what's going to happen and that structure. I think that's helped my mindset a lot. Um, I also think I used to go for breadth of network, knowing everyone. And, through the show, I know a lot of people, but depth is everything. There are 5 people who I meet with once a fortnight, and they know everything about me. They are my closest friends, confidants, talk about anything with them. Like, work with people you respect and admire, and good things will happen. And there doesn't have to be a transaction today, tomorrow, ever. But I just enjoy hanging out with them. I think I found incredible stability through that in particular. Also, human connection. Like being physically with people has made me a lot more stable. I used to spend a lot of time, I kind of lived outside of the city, not particularly far, but suburbs. And it meant that I just came in once a day or once or twice a week. Now I walk with people in the park, founders, every morning. And I find that stabilizing, actually, the human connection. And so I think that would be another big one, actually. Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of times your mom and the importance of her. And I'd be remiss, I asked about your grandpa. I'm curious about your mom too. Why is she such a prominent figure on your Twitter? Why do you talk about her so much at every opportunity? And what's the deeper context there?
Yeah, I mean, this is a woman who got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. This is for those that don't know, it's kind of a very challenging condition to deal with, which generally leads to a loss of ability to move. It can be very painful, and it's a degenerative condition. That's very, very hard to deal with. You're suddenly faced with questions of, will I be able to hold my grandchildren? Will I be able to walk with them in the park? Will I be able to be the mother that I want to be? Real hard questions. She is the light in every room. Everywhere she goes, everyone is like that infectious energy, that smile, that face. It makes me feel better. It makes me happy. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned from my mother is kind of, if you radiate energy, it can be infectious. And so be the light in every room. Be the one who is excited. Be the one who is positive. Bring charisma. And she does it in a way that is really exceptional. And people find that with her when they spend time with her. I think the thing that one worries about is you want to admit when it's not okay. And I think what I would worry about with my mother is she is this positive radiating force. And I don't know if she would always admit that it's not okay. And that's the question that I openly have. And I hope she would, but I don't know. And so I'd say number one, that. Number two, again, similar to my grandfather, the way she makes you feel in her house is safe, is like it's your own home, like you belong. And I think making someone feel like they belong is a very, very special thing. And she does that instantly with a wide variety of different people. And so I think about that too. She's also brilliant. She's obsessive about whatever she does. This is a person with MS, okay, where physical movement can be very challenging. She fucking walks 30 kilometers a day. She has become a Pilates instructor, like several levels high. She's by far fitter than any 25-year-old that I know, by far. Destroys them in Pilates classes, in most classes. Why? It's because of her determination, her awareness that there are things she doesn't want to do that she still does, and there are things that make her better, and she is unwavering in her persistence and kind of grinding nature of doing them, which I love and I respect.
Yeah. Well, when you were obese and you said like that is something that really like stays at you and is in you at your core. I mean, like, how do you think about that? Like, how did he treat you? Was he around? Like,
Obesity was actually one of the most helpful things in the world for me, and it was very helpful because it taught me that actually there was nothing that I couldn't do. And I don't mean that arrogantly, I mean that about anyone. That it's all in your hands. We went back to that. Well, where do you absolve responsibility? There's no absolving responsibility. It's not McDonald's fault that I ate the double chicken burger. It's my fucking fault. And
yeah,
actually, I lost. There are so many things I learned from being fat. I lost 45 kilograms in 6 months, which is an unhealthily fast way to do it. But it worked for me. I didn't want to wait 3 years to lose that weight. I couldn't do 2 pounds a week for 500 weeks. Like, it wasn't going to be me. So what works for me doesn't work for others. And then actually, there's nothing you can't do. If you can lose 45 kilos at 16, 17 when you're being mercilessly bullied at the same time for suddenly being healthy. You know, you're being bullied for being fat, and then suddenly you try and be healthy and go on runs, and you get bullied for that. If you can go through that and continuously doing that day in, day out, when it's hard, I used to get up at 6 a.m. and run in the dark at boarding school because the dark shielded my sadness in myself of being fat. I used to listen to the song Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. And it's, I don't want the world to see who I am. And I always felt like that when I was young and fat. And I felt ashamed. And I felt now, and I look back now, and I'm like, if I can go through that hardness, actually, that solitude of running in the dark at 6 a.m. because you're too ashamed of yourself to run in daylight. If you can go through that and lose 45 kilos, there is nothing that I cannot do. There is no artificial ceiling. There is no limit to your ability or my ability other than our willingness to get up today and tomorrow. And the only thing that matters is, the conversation you have with yourself. And the only conversation I have with myself is, the only thing that matters is the next step and the next step. And I think obesity was one of the most impactful kind of lessons of my life.
what was the switch that flipped?
I could tell you something really profound, and I read a Seneca book and I saw the light, or I could tell you that this really pretty girl came into school one day and she was new, and I thought she was the most beautiful thing in the world. And then I looked at myself and saw Augustus Gloop staring back at me, and I was like, well, she's not going to go out with me if I look like this. So I should probably, lose some weight if she's going to notice me. And so every day I went to the gym and I started running in the morning, and that was because I wanted her to like me.
And this was pre-internet?
This was when I was 16, 17. So, we had the internet, but I wasn't doing anything particularly important. I run a couple of businesses before that made some money, but I wasn't doing 20 VC yet for sure.
Yeah, because it's interesting because those lessons, I'm sure, from losing the weight carried over to 20 VC. And oftentimes you find this with different founders, and it's like there's like a fitness base that goes on top of business.
100%. I think we don't look at entrepreneurship enough as athletes. Like, we perform in an arena. It's different to a runner. It's different to a sportsman. But we perform in an arena, and the sleep schedule that we have and the diet that we have should be treated in the same way. In many ways, it can be much more important. The decisions we make can be, many millions of dollars and irreversible, where a football match can be reversible in certain ways. And so, I absolutely think of entrepreneurs as athletes, and there's many conditions that you have to monitor and analyze around them to make the best performance.
How else do you treat yourself as an athlete, as an entrepreneur?
Uh, very badly. Very, very bad. I hate all these things. That it's like, I always watch these like Instagram posts. It's like, I get up at 7 and then I meditate and then I read a book and it's like, Seneca's, thoughts on, omniscience. No, actually, I work PST time, so I generally work until about 3 a.m. My alarm clock generally goes about 8 a.m., where I kind of, begrudgingly pick it up and throw it against the wall. And I get to my desk. And so I would say sleep, I don't nail. I'm very fortunate in the way that I don't need a huge amount of it. So that's lucky. Honestly, I find like fasting very helpful just because it allows me to not feel lethargic. I love eating, and if you put a sandwich in front of me, I'll eat two. And so I'll feel lethargic, and so like just really instills that routine. Going back to it, finding the routine in daily habits is really important for me. I don't like not drinking, very important. I make sure to drink a lot of water. Water's one thing where I drink a lot. And then protein. Dude, I shovel protein in like nothing else. Like double the amount of pounds, the amount of kilos you are, you should double it. And that's the grams you should have in protein. So I'll always make sure to hit 160 grams of protein a day, which is a lot. And that's how I look after myself. I would say I always get a lot of fresh air. I do a lot of walking meetings. We said earlier about like how do we get the most out of people. I find walking in the park a great way to get the most out of people. Instead of a boardroom or a meeting room, when you walk around a park, people open up in a way that they never would in an office. You get your steps in, for sure. Really helpful.
Steve Jobs used to do that as well. And I've often thought about what would this podcast look like if it was a walking podcast? So
I would love to do. I would genuinely love to do that. The only trouble I have is background noise, the sirens, and everything in between. The question I often ask is, what would MrBeast do if he was running my company? And I encourage everyone to ask this. If you're a B2B enterprise security startup, you can still ask this. Like, push your creativity to the end and think through what that would look like. Now,
it's interesting. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. No, but it's interesting. But the incentives of MrBeast are different than what your incentives might be. Do you think your incentives as MrBeast are aligned with 20 VC?
No, but I think our incentives are pushing if we're taking on this exercise, it's a case of what's the objective? The objective is pushing our creativity to the extreme, which is probably MrBeast. His is in order to make money from YouTube revenues. Totally get that. But like, it's just a good forcing function. It's like a creative playground for your mind to push to what it could be, And so I try and think through that lens sometimes. And as I said, you rarely will you take actually a concrete action out of it, but it'll give you an idea. It'll give you a kernel of wisdom, of knowledge, of an additional thing that you could do.
It's interesting because my mind goes to what would Rick Rubin do? And it's interesting that Rick Rubin and MrBeast both represent creativity in way different ways, right? Like Rick Rubin's like, let's be at the studio. What's the vibe of this? Let's make the vibe feel as good as possible. MrBeast is like, how do we create something that's going to get the most views and money? And it's like, that's an interesting difference as well. Like cultivating something for the vibe of it versus cultivating it for views and money leaves you in a way different place. So like a quick example of this might be like Brian Johnson was on the podcast and he's speaking and he's pausing for 20 seconds. MrBeast would be like, cut that shit out. Rick Rubin would be like, that's an important piece that really indicates who Brian Johnson is. So just a little difference there in creativity.
I think they're both right, and I think that's what makes brilliance. And actually, to the point on AI infused into media, like nuance and ambiguity is something which AI has and will continue to struggle with. I think for the foreseeable, it's very difficult for any AI tool to understand what a pause is and is not meant to be. Determining the value of silence is, I think, technically impossible. Actually, unless you did sentiment analysis on the question and then were able to derive value in tone, it's very, very hard to do. Three people I respect more than anyone right now is MrBeast, it's Bernard Arnault, and it's Ryan Reynolds. I think Ryan Reynolds is one of the most strategic thinkers in content and business that we have today. What you see with him do with Wrexham, and I don't know if you've seen, but if you analyze his two partner announcements, which was United Airlines and Stork, the coffee brand, the way that they announced them with very, very funny, humorous clips with Ryan in himself, he appreciates that he still needs to be the central actor in this, was fantastic. This was a way to announce sponsors. He turned it into a viral comedy video. That's genius.
What would you ask him, given the opportunity?
What would I ask Ryan given the opportunity? What would he love to do, but for one reason or another is constrained from doing, is unable to do? I think that would be really interesting. This is a man now who has the world at his fingertips. He has enough money to buy pretty much anything, many billions. What would he do? Well, it goes kind of a shitty one, but it does reveal a lot about people. What does he believe that many other people disagree with him on?
Mm.
Or what is he ashamed to believe, but still believes?
Mm. This is a podcasting masterclass here. Gonna write these down, put them in my notes.
That's a hard one. What question do you least want to be asked right now? That's a good one. I like these ones. I like. The trouble is you're not going to get answers.
Yeah, it's well for the first one, what about you? What are you constrained that you wish you could do but that you can't? Because some might look at you and be like, well, he's got a lot of money, he's got a lot of fame, but in a particular arena. But what about you?
I would say that great funds are built on the back of three chapters. Number one, you're collaborative. You write 100K checks and you're super friendly. Number two, you're collaborative 80% of the time and then you're competitive 20% of the time. Generally, you write collaborative checks, but sometimes you'll write larger competitive checks. I thought we were in chapter 2, and honestly, we're in chapter 3, which is founders want us to lead rounds. We have the ability to, but the structure and style of our funds means it would mess up portfolio construction for us to lead rounds without skewing concentration in the portfolio. And so I feel a little bit capital constrained on the investing side because there are many great companies that I would like to lead rounds in, but we have to take a secondary position because of the capital availability that we have.
I appreciate the in the weeds answer there. It's very specific, and about 80% of it went straight over my head. But
I feel constrained there. I feel constrained and frustrated in the way that, going back to our obsessive mind, I became very into weights and I completely fucked up my wrist, which is why I'm running again, because I can't do any weights. My body is physically constraining me in that way. I feel physical constraints also, like, I have a brilliant girlfriend. I want to be the best partner to her. But Jesus, man, I'm just one person. And I feel, I always feel like I'm failing at something. And I think maybe other people do, or maybe it's just me and I should see a therapist. But like, I'm failing at being a son. I'm failing at being an entrepreneur. I'm failing at being an investor. I'm failing at being a boyfriend, a brother. At some point, I always feel like I'm failing at one. You're never killing it at all of them. And I actually have a quadrant on my whiteboard, and it has work, it has family, it has friends, and it has health. And I put girlfriend in the friends. It's like social, hope she doesn't listen. And then I will literally just go through on a daily basis and put in a green tick or a red cross. And if I have too many of those in a continuous month, I will very quickly see. And so I'll call my mother for 5 minutes on the way back from a dinner. Hey, how are you? How was your day? Good, good, good. Come home, green tick. Done. Like, it sounds quantitative and not very nice, but you just want to make sure that you're not too much in the red and you're not too much in the black. And actually, you're still doing all that you need to do across those four quadrants.
Do you keep these in a spreadsheet?
No, I have them on a physical whiteboard. I
But so
think
the
they,
whiteboard, it stops. Like you have to erase it and then you don't know about your progress from week to week.
I
Is
don't,
that on purpose?
yeah, I don't like the historical look back. I'm like, I know where I am now, and I know where I will be yesterday and the week before. But what's gone long term has gone long term. Maybe it's interesting from a data standpoint, but I think kind of appreciating the present and like the most recent time is where I really focus that for.
Yeah, but it's interesting because you could look at if you had it on a spreadsheet and you could say like 4 weeks ago, I had a bunch of meetings here. So therefore area was going to be worse. And you could actually make improvements in it if you tracked month to month or year to year. But
Okay, you have a load of work. I'm going to give you a guess that the rest is going to shit. Like most often, a lot of it is quite common sense. It's like, it's just a forcing function to know in real time how you think on a daily basis. I totally get you. You could even rate it out of 10 and then say how you felt certain things were and what was easy, what was not easy. You could do a lot from a data standpoint, but it's more a real time litmus test of how I feel the four quadrants of my life are going. But I get you. From a data standpoint, you could geek out on it in certain ways.
yeah, well, if you feel like you're constantly failing at one of these quadrants, that's really, that's sad, that you should always feel like you're losing at something. And it's probably not true.
I think everyone's always losing at something.
Yeah, but yes, that is true, but that is an awful way to live in one's head or mind. It's like, yes, I'm losing that I'm not in the NBA, but am I really losing? And so I don't look at the world that way. And I think you're losing by thinking that way to begin with. Oh, I'm always losing at something. Like that's a very
I don't think,
toxic.
oh, I'm always losing at something. I think, oh, I can do better at something.
That was your word. You said, I feel like I'm always failing at something.
Sure, which and then the consequent action is, so I'm going to do better at it. Do you see?
Yeah.
That's why you
Yeah.
take the reflective time. I totally get your position, and I totally understand it. And it's like if you just sit back on the, oh, I feel like I'm losing, 100%. Then it's like, woe is me,
Right.
poopy pants. But I use it as a forcing function to be better, to recognize that something's out of kilter, and actually I can do something. It's almost for me, it's a positive proactivity mechanism to recognize where I'm out of kilter, where I'm a little bit in the red and then to change that and to also not let it get too far. I always think that like habits are very important. Never miss a gym session twice. It's okay to miss it once, but don't miss it twice because then it becomes a habit. And so I find that this kind of proactive like whiteboarding exercise in particular helps me just appreciate that actually never miss it twice. And it can go in the red, but don't let it get too far.
Yeah. No, that does make sense. You said before that if you were going to write a book, it would be on mental discipline. What would some of the chapters be about?
Consistency. It's pretty much the only thing that matters. Um, I think a really interesting question is like, you know, bluntly, one of like, it's a hard one, but like, you have to be your best self on your worst day. And so, what do you tell yourself when it is your worst day? And actually having the mental fortitude and strength to say, you know what, I'm going to do it regardless. And actually, that's important. Um, I think that's really, really crucial. No one gets up at 6 a.m. and feels like, yes, I want to go for this run in the cold. But it's how you speak to yourself. As I said, the only thing that matters is the conversation you have with yourself. And the only thing that matters is the next step. Often thinking out too far ahead of time is challenging. How do you break down goals into more attainable steps? You know, how do you do 15 kilometers when it's cold and dark and your legs are stiff? Break it down. Just do 5. You'll see that at 5 you get better. What does that look like? How do you make the hard normal? That's a beautiful thing. Making the hard normal is something that I always look to do. Something I look to do with running in particular is a good example. People like 10K. That seems like quite a long way to run. I mean, 10K, that's like a warm up. Like, it's nothing because you do it every day or because you do it often or whatever that is. How do you make the challenging just part of your existence?
And you've certainly done that. And I'm appreciative for you for doing that with the podcast and how you're showing up. So keep being you, my man. I'd like to end this podcast, and I do end these podcasts with challenges. I ask the guest for a challenge to leave the audience with something that they can actually do. They've listened to us for an hour and a half. What are they actually going to take away from it? And what action steps should someone take on the next path, the next day that they go on?
Yeah, I'd say just a very simple one. What are you going to do today to make yourself better? And like write that down in your notes, in your phone, text someone if you can and say, hey, I'm going to do X. Make me accountable. Tell someone you're going to do it. It could be I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to do press ups. I'm going to do stop smoking, stop drinking. I'm going to sleep tonight at midnight, not at 2 a.m. after scrolling on TikTok for hours. What are you going to do today to be better? And then only worry about doing that once. And then only worry about doing that one more time. And then one more time. And then one more time. And then you will find in 10 days, you'll be an infinitely better person if you chose a good option. I think choose something today that will make you better.
Very, very well said. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom. I appreciate you so much. 20VC, the podcast. Go check it out. Anywhere else we should send people to connect with you further?
Twitter, love Twitter, Harry Stebbings. You see much more unfiltered thoughts there, but I've loved this. Danny, thank you for the work. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really respect and appreciate the amount of work that you do. I know how much it takes, so huge appreciation and respect, and much love, my friend.
Thank you.